off love, I feed off love, I breathe off love. I think of love, I drink of love.
Hey everyone, so I just got back from a 3-day trip to Big Bend National Park and Marfa, Texas. We did this trip a bit on a whim, but we'd never been to Big Bend and we'd never been to Marfa. I mean, it is like one of the most remote national parks in the US, so there's good reason for it. It's a miserable drive for us, but we wanted to do it this weekend, so we made it happen. So the first day was all about exploring Marfa. We went in, got some coffee at the Sentinel, which is the local newspaper and an amazing coffee shop, way cooler than most coffee shops, and then spent the day sort of exploring some of the different galleries. Highly recommend it. Tons of cool art there, tons of cool eclectic shops. Marfa is this really interesting artist enclave in the middle of the desert. So it's a town of, I think, 1,700 people, and it's exactly the kind of oasis in the desert I would be looking for if I needed someplace to go. From Marfa, we drove on to Terlingua. Terlingua is sort of a town just outside of Big Bend. They call it a ghost town because it sort of is, but what it really is home to a bunch of different Airbnbs and vacation rentals to be able to host people at Big Bend. We ended up renting an Airbnb because I was way too late to the game to try to rent a campsite at Big Bend National Park. So instead of staying in a tent, we stayed in a uber cool, modern, sort of brutalistic Airbnb that had a pool and a view of the mountains, so can't complain. This place was super cool. Gave us a space to chill out. We did some yoga to knock the kinks out of the long car ride, and just chilled out and watched the sunset because we already had an amazing view of the mountains. So for day 2, our big goal was to hike up and see the sunrise from the top of the Chisos mountains. We hadn't been in the park at all, and we wanted our big reveal to be as the sun came up from the highest altitude in the park. And so we hiked the Lost Mine Trail. Now it doesn't get you to the highest point, but it's a relatively easy 4.5 mile, I think 1,000-foot incline hike that's got some of the most breathtaking views in the park that I think you can get.
I know it's real these days to be hopelessly gray, romantic, every word I say. But I would rather dance than just get in your pants, and that's the way I hope I stay.
I had tons of fun on this. I took way too many photos to start off the trip, but really enjoyed the hike and enjoyed everything that we were able to see on the way up.
She don't wanna have kids.
Now from this hike, we drove over to the Santa Elena Canyon, and the drive to get there is on the Ross Maxwell Scenic Drive. Ross Maxwell was apparently one of the original leaders of the park back when it was first opened, and perhaps an advocate to actually opening the park as well. And the scenic drive is also very, very interesting. You get a beautiful view of the Chihuahua Desert and the Chisos Mountains all along the way, and the landscape kind of changes dramatically. And the Rio Grande Canyon is also quite impressive. I didn't expect the walls to be so massively big, but as you drive closer and closer to the canyon, you realize it's just a tower of rock with the Rio Grande carving somehow in between it. And it's also an international borderline between the US and Mexico, which again, I think it's the only national park that also has an international boundary within it. So by that time, I think we'd already gotten in something like 10 miles of hiking. It was time to go back and hang out a little bit. We had to enjoy the pool. It was the hottest day we were there, and we had this outrageous Airbnb. So we obviously spent some time hanging out. From there, we went to the Grapevine Hills. And the Grapevine Hills are actually what I think is my favorite part of the trip. This is where the balanced rock is, and what it is an outcropping of these interesting geological rock formations. We went there for the sunset and had a really enjoyable hike. I had a ton of fun taking a lot of photos. I was super intrigued by the geology. I kept making the joke that I thought the place rocked. So after the hike, it was the end of the day, and we went back to our cool Airbnb. And one of the things that Big Bend is also really known for, and that area is really known for in general, is having exceptionally dark night skies. There's almost no light pollution, and what it means is you can see everything at night. And if you've never had the experience, I would highly recommend going to a place like this where you can see the stars unfiltered with your naked eye without any light pollution, because it is remarkable. You can see things like Andromeda with your naked eye, clearly see the Milky Way, and just enjoy the stars at night. Now, the third day, after doing the big sunrise hike, we wanted to take a slower morning. We enjoyed watching the sunrise from the Airbnb, and then took off to the area of the park that we hadn't been to yet, which is the east side, the Rio Grande village area, and the Boquillas Canyon area. Now, I'd say this was quite similar to the Santa Elena Canyon, but again, the drive there was quite different. The Chihuahua Desert and the landscape was, again, diverse and different the whole way there, which I didn't expect. After making it to this canyon, we went to probably one of my favorite places in the park, which was called the Ernst Tinaja Slot Canyon. You have to drive about 4.5 miles on caliche roads, and you need four-wheel drive, but it's not too bad. I can't imagine it when there's a rainstorm, but we were there in winter, had no issues with water. So the Ernst Tinaja Canyon is really cool because it's a slot canyon that's cutting out into these layers of sedimentary rock that have been carved out, and it just looks really, really cool. An incredibly unique formation that I haven't seen much. Again, perhaps I'm a bit of a geology nerd, but I thought the place rocked. This was a super doable hike. I think it was like 1.5 miles with no elevation, and you walk right into the slot canyon and get to see these remarkable features right away. In fact, the drive out there is much worse than the actual hike. You spend the time bouncing around in your car, but it's no big deal. Overall, I was incredibly impressed with West Texas, Big Bend, and Marfa. I probably had too low of expectations and didn't expect all of the diversity and to see such different features in every area of the park that we saw. It's certainly on my list of places to go back to, especially for some astrophotography. I want to see the center of the Milky Way when it's in its prime. Thanks for watching the video. If you like it, please do like and subscribe. It really does help the channel and helps me continue making videos like it. Thanks.
In the page, you remain.